The US and Japan have been conducting war games and joint military exercises in the event of a conflict with China over Taiwan, amid escalating concerns over the Chinese military's assertive activity. The exercise includes top-secret tabletop war games and joint drills in the South China and East China Seas. Chinese President Xi Jinping pledged a complete reunification with Taiwan as he delivered a speech to mark 100 years of the Chinese Communist Party. As a result, China vowed to invade Taiwan and explained a three-stage plan for a successful invasion. Taiwan is the most dangerous flashpoint in the relationship between the US and China. Beijing claims Taiwan, a democratic self-ruled island, as a runaway province that must be reunited with the mainland, using force if necessary. The ruling Chinese Communist Party, which turns 100 years, has never governed Taiwan. In the last few years, the US has moved closer to Taiwan, angering China, which views the island as having no right to conduct diplomacy of its own. In his speech to mark the occasion, the Chinese president vowed to crush any attempt to get in the way of complete reunification of Taiwan with the mainland, describing it as an historic mission and an unshakable commitment for the party. It is also a shared aspiration for all the sons and daughters of the Chinese nation, he said. He called on all Chinese people, including compatriots across the Taiwan Strait, to unite and take resolute action to utterly defeat any attempt towards Taiwan independence and work together to create a bright future for national rejuvenation. Xi Jinping's vow to reunification was followed up with an article in a Chinese magazine, which outlined a three-pronged attack that would pave the way for an amphibious landing and the toppling of the government in Taipei. The first stage would see DF-16 short-range ballistic missile attacks pulverizing airports, early warning radar, anti-air missile bases, and command centers across the island. The article states, the attacks against Taiwan's airports would continue until Chinese surface troops had accomplished an assault landing. Following this, China's H-6 bombers and J-16 fighter jets would attack naval ports, although the facilities would not be destroyed, so the People's Liberation Army could use them for a landing. In the second stage, the article states AS-91 and CJ-10 cruise missiles would be unleashed from land, warships, and submarines. Military bases, ammunition depots, communications infrastructure, and key road junctions would be crippled. Drones would then be dispatched to assess the damage. Finally, the article said warships and land-based rocket forces would wipe out any remaining obstacles, so the People's Liberation Army's Marine Corps and amphibious landing troops would safely land. As a response to this plan, the US and Japan are holding military exercises in the region. Dmitry Sevastopoulos gives details about the multilateral puzzle in his article. Shinzo Abe, former Japanese prime minister, decided in 2019 to significantly expand military planning because of the threat to Taiwan and the Sanggupkah Islands in the East China Sea. This work has continued under the administrations of Joe Biden and Abe's successor, Yoshihide Suga. The US and Japan have become alarmed as China has flown more fighter jets and bombers into Taiwan's air defense identification zone, including a record 28 fighters on June 15. The Chinese Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard have also become increasingly active around the Sanggupkah, which are administered by Japan but claimed by China and Taiwan. China insists that it wants to unify Taiwan with the mainland. While it says it wants peaceful unification, it has not ruled out the use of force to seize control of Taiwan. In many ways, the People's Liberation Army drove the US and Japan together and toward new thinking on Taiwan, said Randall Shriver, who served as the top Pentagon official for Asia until the end of 2019. Assertiveness around the Sanggupkah and Taiwan at the same time drives home the issue of proximity. The US has long wanted Japan, a mutual defense treaty ally, to conduct more joint military planning, but Japan was constrained by its post-war pacifist constitution. That obstacle was eased, but not eliminated when the Shinzo Abe government in 2015 reinterpreted the constitution to allow Japan to defend allies that came under attack. As the two allies started to bolster their joint planning, Japan asked the US to share its Taiwan war plan. The Pentagon demurred because it wanted to focus on boosting coordination with Tokyo in phases. One former US official said the eventual goal was for the allies to create an integrated war plan for Taiwan. The US military and Japanese self-defense forces had conducted joint exercises in the South China Sea that had been couched as disaster relief training. The countries have also held more military exercises around the Sanggupkah, which could also help prepare for any conflict with China over Taiwan, which is just 350 kilometers west of the islands. Some of the activities we're training on are highly fungible, said Shriver, adding that exercises such as an amphibious landing in a disaster relief scenario would be directly applicable to any conflict around the Sanggupkah or the Taiwan Strait. Mark Montgomery, a retired admiral who commanded the USS George Washington Aircraft Carrier Strike Group and was director of operations at Indo-Pacific, said the Pentagon needed a comprehensive understanding of the support Japan could provide in the case of a conflict. As a crisis grows and Japan is potentially drawn in as a participant, the US will need to understand how Japan could support or enable US operations, he added. US and Japanese diplomats are examining the legal issues related to any joint military action, including access to bases and the kind of logistical support Japan could provide US forces engaged in a conflict with China. In the event of a war over Taiwan, the US would rely on air bases in Japan. But that raises the odds that Tokyo would be dragged into the conflict, particularly if China tried to destroy the bases to hobble the US. One official said the US and Japan needed to urgently create a trilateral sharing mechanism with Taiwan for information about Chinese naval and air force movements, especially around the Miyako Strait to the east of Taiwan, which is covered by Japanese sensors from the northeast and Taiwanese sensors from the southwest. Some of that kind of data is shared between Taiwan and the US and between Japan and the US. But we have no direct sharing trilaterally, the official said. You cannot start setting that up in the middle of a contingency. You have to do it now. Another official said the three nations had taken a small but important step in 2017 by agreeing to share military aircraft codes to help identify friendly aircraft. Taiwanese officials and US and Japanese sources said cooperation had since increased significantly, driven by the growing awareness in Japan about the importance of Taiwan, which is 110 kilometers from Yonaguni, the westernmost island in the Japanese archipelago, for its security. The Japanese government has increasingly recognized and even acknowledges publicly that the defense of Taiwan equates to the defense of Japan, said Heino Klink, a former top Pentagon official who oversaw military relations with Japan and Taiwan from late 2019 until the end of the Trump administration. In the case of war, some scenarios would play a destructive role in the region. Most Taiwanese have shown no interest in being ruled by China. Taiwan's government says only the island's people can decide their future and has decried Chinese pressure. On the other side, the Chinese president wants to become a hero who can annex Taiwan.